Hello there, I'm Adam and this is Candid Scale Modeling. Thanks for stopping by. This is a video that I shot back in February when I was toying with the whole YouTube idea. I had gone to a hobby store and I was looking for, companies that I hadn't built models from, trying to get away from the whole Tamiya Revell monogram locked-in cycle there. Came across HobbyBoss, didn't know anything about him. Huey's an iconic helicopter, and I figured what the heck, we'll give it a shot. So enough of that, let's get to it. So right off the bat, as I was working on the cockpit interior, which is the majority of this build, most of the work is done on the interior, I noticed that the engineering and the fit was fantastic for this kit. I was really impressed, again, right out of the gate. Seats went in, no problem, tab slot. They actually held in place on their own. A little bit of glue on the bottom just secured them. The joysticks and levers, same thing, small tab, perfect slot, fit right in, held themselves in place. I didn't have any shift or any twisting, drift, that kind of thing that sometimes you get, as the glue dries. Well, the pedals were the first part that I had a little bit of an issue with. They still set right into the slot perfectly fine, but I actually abandoned the tweezers because these little guys were popping off the tweezers constantly. So just a little word of warning, unless you're better with tweezers than I am, just use your fingers, you'll be fine. The frame part of the nose, just two little pieces on either side of the control panel. Went in just fine again, like all the other parts. You just want to really make sure these are set well. Clean up any detail because these will be seen through the bottom windows. I then primed the control panel and the rest of the interior using Vallejo black primer. I went with black on this one because while it's going to be an interior gray, I wanted to kind of darken the gray a little bit, make it a little more rich than it usually does coming out of the bottle. So I'm not completely sure if I didn't record it or I just somehow misplaced the recording, but once the primer dried, I then went over the entire interior and control panels, etc. with Vallejo light gray. Again, right out of the bottle, the light gray tends to be too light for my taste, so the black primer kind of darkens it up and tones it down a little bit. When that all dried, I just used a very tiny brush and did a light dry brushing of black over the instrument bezels to make them pop out a little bit. With the dry brushing done, I then just randomly took some black and white paint and just hit a couple of the bezels. 1/72 is so small that you're not going to get a lot of detail out of them, but you can give the illusion of detail by breaking up the look of the instrument panel. I then went over the center console with Vallejo black just to give it a base coat. I will later do a similar dry brushing on this, but not quite yet. I painted the seats with a Vallejo US dark green. This was a model air color, so it was a little bit thin. Took a couple coats, but yeah, worked out pretty well. Then painted the forward braces, using Vallejo Model Air Metal Color Aluminum. Again, these are going to be seen through the windows, so you want to do your best to make it look pretty good. It was then time to assemble the back platform, for lack of a better word. This is an interior piece, it's not going to be seen by anything, and it's used to support the rotor assembly as well as the back of the rear bench seat. Just like the rest of the kit so far, tab and slot, everything went together, pretty much held itself in place, a little bit of glue just to reinforce it. I then painted the back panel that sits behind the bench seat using Vallejo Buff. It gives kind of a yellowy creamy color, which is what I wanted for a base, so that once I apply some detail weathering over it, it'll look kind of like a used padded back. For a weathering wash kind of color, I went with a pastel technique that I particularly like. As you can see, this is kind of a dirty green-gray pastel. It came out of the box that way. Scrape it with a back of a knife, give yourself a little bit of a powder. Mix it with a medium. In this case, I just used a flat varnish. And then just a little dab of dish detergent. I think mine is ivory. And that breaks the surface tension, lets it flow better. At some point I'll do a whole video on the magic of pastels. I personally love them, but that's the quick version of it. So then, as I said, you just take it and use it as a regular wash. You can go as heavy or light as you want. In this particular case I went heavy, because I wanted the wash to not only fill in the crevices between the pads, but I wanted to also tint the pads themselves. So technically I guess this was a double duty wash and filter glaze. That's terminology I'm still trying to work out. I don't really know the difference between them, but yeah, maybe someday I'll do something on that. With that drying, I then went back to the center console and did a white dry brush over all the buttons to make the buttons, gauges, dials, and doodads pop out a little bit. And then to break it up, give it a little bit of variety, I used some red and yellow paint just to highlight a couple individual parts. Break it up a little bit, make it a little more interesting. We then attached the center console gauge. Again, slid right in. Not much of an issue other than my ever so dexterous fingers. And then we attached the padding that we painted a couple steps ago to the rear platform. And we move on. It's then time to build the base of the rotor assembly. Just a couple parts, but the important part here is to make sure that once you get it all together, you spin the spindle a little bit. Make sure that it's, well, spinny. Unless you want to fix rotor. That's up to you. While that's drying, and we let the interior settle a little bit, just move on quickly and assemble the benches. There's two. There's a long bench on the back, and there's a short bench that goes on the back side of the seats. Take the bench, take the legs, glue them together. That's it. Attaching the benches in place inside was the first part that I actually ran into a little bit of trouble. Some of the holes weren't quite big enough, so I just took the edge of the tip of the X-Acto knife, drilled them out just a hair so they sit in there a little bit better. That worked great for the smaller bench. The larger bench, for some reason, just didn't line up quite right. It took quite a bit of fiddling. Maybe it was just me. Once everything was dried, the benches were then painted with the same US dark green as the front seats. Again, had to do a couple coats because it was a little bit on the thin side. Didn't do anything fancy, just slapped on the paint. The top windows of the Huey's windshield are tinted green. I spared you the horrors and trials and tribulations of masking off the canopy since I am horrible at it. What I ended up doing was just taking small strips of tape and kind of building up the areas to be masked and then just trimming off the little bits that ran over. Again, I am not the person to be talking about how to mask off canopies. Anyways, a little bit of Tamiya clear green, perfect for the job. Painted on the inside, not the outside, and it gives you a nice tinted green effect. So one of the problems with the kit is it is a tail sitter, meaning that it's tail heavy. So I just took a old fishing weight, shaved it down, stuck it in the nose. Did exactly what I needed it to do. It was then time to give the Huey its body. Left and right halves, stuck them together. And again, I was very impressed with the fit. It went together with no problem. There weren't any big gaps, and in fact the seams were minimal. Very minor sanding. Didn't have to do any scraping or heavy filing or anything. Quite impressed. Great kit. Then went ahead and assembled the engine cowling, and that just sits right over the rotors, the base spindle and rotor box that we put together earlier. Not a whole lot to say with that one. Putting the little pitot tubes on the front of I'm assuming they're pitot tubes, on the front of the helicopter, that was a bit challenging for me since I don't have the most dexterous of fingers. But once they got in there, I was glad to be past that part. So I originally went ahead and I attached the front windshield assembly, and I used basically a thin PVA glue. It's a Micromark crystal clear, and it did not work out well for me. And to be honest, a lot of times using the white glues for the clear parts doesn't work out very well for me. In fact, the front and the two sides, that's kind of how I went about doing it, right? Little secret, I actually went ahead and ended up using the Tamiya thin cement later on to hold them in place because the white glue just wasn't doing it. Did I luck out and by not having it craze the plastic? I think so, although I do think the chances of crazing clear plastic is greater if you do it from the inside, so the fumes go up into the plastic, whereas I did it from the outside, so there really wasn't a lot of fumes to worry about. But don't take that advice. I did it, I got away with it. I'll take it for now. After all the clear parts and doors are on, we put the skids on. This is actually a really cool moment for me because now the helicopter can sit like it's supposed to, and you get to see if you got the right amount of weight, and you can really get to see the vehicle take form. So with the helicopter pretty much all done as far as the body and everything goes, just mask everything off and give the entire thing a spray with Vallejo US Dark Green. The black primer really kind of gives a richer tone to the dark green, which is why I use it. Absolutely, you can use white, gray, whatever primer that you want. I just like the black because it darkens everything up a little. When it was time to start the decals, I started with the tail markings, the red arrow saying don't walk into the blade. As you can see, I actually started to paint the area yellow because I wasn't paying attention and didn't realize that the decal itself was the yellow as well as the red markings. This was the most horrible decal I've ever dealt with. In fact, in hindsight, I probably should have stuck with painting it yellow and just cutting out the red letters in nice flat squares and attaching them. It would have gone a lot easier. Anyway, I'm calling this one out special because of just how much of a nightmare it was for me. It did not lay flat. It kept curling. It was just horrible. So once we got that tail decal out of the way, we just went through and applied the decals all around the vehicle. I'm probably going to speed it up a little bit because I really don't have a whole lot to say to cover each and every individual decal. All I'm going to say is the decals went on, pretty standard. Soak the decal, dab off the extra water, get it into place, use your finger or a brush or a toothpick or whatever you need to slide it off the backing, clear up any extra liquid if there is any, decal salt, decal setting solution to fix it into place. Repeat with the next one. The only thing I will say is, even though this is being sped up a little bit, the fail that I promised you, it's right in this section. Hurts every time I see it. Anyways, here we go. Then did a quick mixture of the pastel wash again, this time using an olive drab, a black, brown, and a gray. The olive drab to keep with the green tonality of the overall vehicle, and the other colors just to give it a dingy, grimy kind of look. And then painted the end of the exhaust. I then took some straight pastel, dry, no wash, no mixture, just scraped a little bit of the pastel off onto a little palette. Took a brush which I trimmed down into a little scrubby end, and I used that to scrub in a little bit of exhaust staining right behind the exhaust port itself and the vents along the engine compartment. It's a nice, easy effect. Once all that was done, the last thing I did was I took a small brush and did a little bit of aluminum dry brushing around the areas that would get a little bit of extra wear. The runners on the doors, a few of the highlighted spots, some edges. But nothing major, just a real subtle touch just to give it a little bit of a worn look. And then finally, to wrap things up, sprayed a coat of flat varnish over the entire kit. And once that was dried, lifted off the masking and attached the rotors. And that was it. Now, if you didn't catch the fail, well, take a close look. This will be the Huey with the upside down star. And the worst part is, not only did I do it on one side, I did it on both sides. I didn't notice. And this is something that can happen. You get kind of blind to what you're doing. In hindsight, probably the frustration I had with that yellow tail decal. I probably should have stepped away after that because I was frustrated and just wanted to get the decals done. I was in the wrong frame of mind. But yeah, I actually, varnished it, finished it all up. I actually took pictures of it, posted it to a modeling group, proud as heck. Granted, only a couple people actually called it out. I'm not sure if the others were just being nice or they didn't notice, but could I have gone back and fixed it? Been very difficult because everything was sealed in and weathered and kind of a done deal. So it sits up on my shelf as is, a constant reminder not to do that again. So that's it. HobbyBoss 172nd Huey. If you made it to the end, I appreciate it. Thank you for stopping by. Have a great day and get out there and build something, huh? Catch you later.